This is the Resilient and Resourced Educator, and I'm your host, Danette Adams. On today's episode, we speak with Carolina. She is a grounded educator whose passion for teaching, social justice, and leadership extends beyond the classroom and out into the community. Please join us. I would like to start by inviting you to share a memory of a teacher or a mentor or a coach who was impactful for you.
Oh my gosh. Um, there are so many. It's crazy, really. Like when I look back, I think my teachers were um, some of my biggest role models. And so it doesn't surprise me now that I've become a teacher. But I really remember in Brazil, I'm from Brazil originally. So in Brazil, we had, back when I went to school, we had an in-between grade. So like it was called specifically um, a literacy grade. So it was in between early years and grade one. So like it was an in-between year, and we don't have that anymore. It's changed. The system has changed to kind of mirror this one better. But that particular year, basically back when I went to school, was everything was focused on getting the children to be literate. They really focused that whole year. And you had one teacher, and aside your gym teacher, but that one teacher taught you how to read and how to become a reader. And I remember Tia Jaciara fondly. Like she was, I still remember. I remember even like my parents, they had to move, and my parents they didn't have their parents in the states that we lived in Brazil. And she was the one that offered to keep us and say safely and say, no, do the move that one day and I'll keep the children. Like she was just an incredible human being. And I don't know where she is. I haven't found her on Facebook yet. I still keep hoping that I will, but yeah, she was just beautiful inside and out.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a great memory. Yeah, very
Yeah.
cool. So as we look ahead we're in mid-pandemic right now, as we look ahead to a new school year, I know a lot of people have some concerns, but I also believe that we go into every challenge with just inherent strengths or skills that we've built, strengths that we've earned and honed. So I'm wondering, what strengths are you going to take with you into this next coming year?
Uh, right. So I think for me, again, just giving you a little bit of my background because it matters in terms of what kinds of strengths I pull from. I'm a mixed person. My great grandmother in Brazil, my grandfather, they were indigenous in South America. I'm an immigrant. And with that comes a lot of understanding that life shifts, moves, and changes on you on a whim. I mean, my grandfather had to leave everything behind to start new in a city that he really knew nothing about. And not only that, it was a very racist city in Sao Paulo at the time when he moved. This is a brown man who moved to a city that had posters saying, keep the city clean, kill a brown man at the time, right? So, and that's the reality for people of color. So being a woman of color, an immigrant, I think some of the biggest things for me is that I draw from. One is the memory of what has brought me here. And I know how hard my grandparents have worked. And then when I look back and I think about them, I just draw strength from that. And I always pray at night thinking, okay, if you did it, I can do it too. If you've survived wars, pandemics in your time, then I can do it too. And I will honor your efforts for me to be here. And the other thing is that intrinsic understanding that life is motion, that we created these static structures that are our schools and our homes, and they're still, but truly, life means change, and change can be good and bad. And it's really, it will catch you off guard, but what you make with that makes all the difference.
Mm.
So I have this very strong rooted positive attitude, not a flimsy positivity. I don't like that shallowness of, everything is positive. No, sometimes things hurt. I lost an uncle to COVID. Like I lost family during the pandemic, and I was hurting. Um, but also that drawing from my aunt's strength and seeing how she was able to carry on so gracefully. We need to look at that best practices from each other and see, what strengthens somebody, then can I tap into that? For my aunt, it's her faith, and I have my faith, and I really draw from it. And I think, again, regardless of religion, to be able to tap into something that keeps your trust in the universe, and keep you grounded so that you can always do your best. So those are some of the things. And for me, that's family. It's faith. It's what grounds me.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's just going to be such a powerful companion for you as you go into the fall. That's great. So, on the opposite side now, when things do get tough, what are some areas where you might need support from other people? You might need to lean on other resources when you're not feeling
Right.
particularly strong.
I think we have to really, all of us educators right now, we really have to be kind to each other and remember that we all have families, that we all are struggling, regardless of our role in the system. I just texted someone whose hierarchy is much higher than me, but I work with that person. And I just texted him to make him laugh the other day, like, just because I don't know that somebody is actually thinking of the human behind a superintendent, for example, right? I said, hey, I just had this thought and I thought it was hilarious. He didn't write back, but anyhow, he knows me well. But I just think, like, we have to remember that regardless of our place in the system, that we all have losses, and we all have anxieties, and this is really affecting us all as human beings equally. And in that regard, there is no hierarchy. My principal, she is my boss and she is my leader, but she's also a wife, and her partner works in the medical industry, so he's exposed. So, we have to be kind, right? So I think resources is really like making each other feel safe to ask questions, to be able to say, I don't know how to deal with this, because really we don't know how to deal with a lot of the things that are coming our way right now. And being supportive of each other. And if you don't have the answer, you can say, hey, I really don't know, but I'm going to look it up with you. Or, hey, I have these answers. They worked for me. And that's something I'm really adamant about, is sometimes we know something, but maybe it worked for me and it might not work. Just because it worked for me, it may not work for somebody else, because they have a different classroom, a different experience, different sets of students. So I think, again, just looking out for each other, making sure we ask questions, make each other feel safe to ask the questions, access resources that you have at hand, but also be humble to understand that not all resources may work for everybody.
Right.
And then just, again, do the best you can with that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Great advice. That's great. I'm thinking about now, you mentioned earlier when we were talking before about you have two young children at home. And what are your concerns about, safety for your home and that kind of thing when you're going into a class, you're going to a school to teach, they possibly are going to other schools, and your bubble's expanding exponentially. Have you thought about whether or not you're going to put any specific protocols in place for you and your children?
I have, actually, interesting enough. It is, I won't lie, it is causing me great anxiety. I'm dealing with it as much as I can, breathing through, trying to problem solve as I can. One of the things that, my situation is interesting. My children have two homes because they go between mom and dad. Like, I'm in a split family. So they have two bubbles starting, like, from the get-go. That's, and both parents are teachers. So that is, yeah, it's a nightmare. And their stepmom too is also a teacher. So it's really crazy. So it's a lot of exposure, really. So, other than the obvious, which is like wear a mask, and there's no negotiation around that. We have taken some measures. And again, I just want to, Danette, make it clear, this is what I feel that works for our family, right? I don't want people to get any anxiety of what we've chosen. And I'm very respectful of everybody's choice because I don't think we fully know what to do
Yeah.
right now. And everybody's doing the best they can. One of the things we did is we pulled our children from daycare. We felt that, and it's a scramble, just even trying to now figure out what to do, how to keep them safe at that time. Like we've been scrambling. Like I live with my best friend. We're not a couple. That's an interesting situation too, worth sharing because it gives people a different way of looking at things. We're just two single moms. We were tired of having a single income, and we decided to combine income and combine the house. And we each have our own, little family areas in our house. But that means this friend of mine, she's actually working from home. So I can leave my children here early in the morning and they can walk to school because it's 2 minutes away from them.
Right.
And so that way it's less exposure to daycare. The other thing, we bought little clips for their masks. I found something on Etsy so that in the event that their masks fall or they want to put it down for some reason, like to eat, I don't want that mask touching surfaces.
Yeah.
So, just thinking of those little parts, right? Like, so then now they have these little clips that the mask stays right here on their, like just on their chest if it comes down. We agreed, my daughters and I, we've talked about this. And again, I don't even know if it makes any sense or not, but it just makes me feel safer. Like we're going to pull their hair back and they're not going to school with their hair loose anymore. Like, just as it's one less thing flopping around that, so I said, when you go to school, we're either going to braid your hair or, the other thing, my sister-in-law, she is, a doctor in Spain. My brother lives in Spain. And one of the protocols that they had there at her house, because she was so exposed, I mean, she was working frontline. She would come to the door and right away at the door, she would take all of her clothes off and put it in a bag and then go shower right away. Like that was one of the protocols that they had, like her shoes didn't make it into the house, or if they did, they stayed right at the door. So I think we do what we can and know. So I'm planning on, the girls come back from school and they go straight into the shower. I want those clothes in a bag, and same thing with me, so that we can hopefully, keep ourselves safe. And the other piece that has been really, I've been investing a lot right now so that we can have a few things in place, is an immune system boost. So we've been really working hard here at home. We got rid of flowers, we got rid of all sorts of things, and we were working with two different coaches, my friend and I, on nutrition and explaining to the children like it's non-negotiable now because we really need you to be healthy, and you're going to take your vitamins, and we're going to make food that you don't necessarily love, but so sorry, so sad. So, we need to do everything we can to keep you healthy. So those are the things that we are trying to tackle here.
Right. Well, those are some very practical things that if people do feel it suits them or their family, that they could do immediately. Just the things about the clips and then, the showering when you get home and that kind of thing are just very helpful and practical. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But the children have a linen too to carry their own hand sanitizer. Like that's another thing we
Okay.
bought. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Just little things like that. I think that's going to be a great help. Earlier, you were talking about us having compassion, everyone having compassion because we're all in the same boat, but we all come at it from a different way. And some of us are more privileged than others and have more resources at our access. But would you have any other advice besides that, having compassion for everybody, for teachers who are really struggling, maybe with struggling to decide whether to go back to school, or their anxiety levels that when they are going back to school? Just any advice you'd have, maybe for a young teacher who's just starting out.
Yeah. I think young teachers, I think we wait a lot on the system to, for example, do things like partner up young teachers with mentors. From very early on in my career, I never waited for NTIP, or I never waited for the system. Like I always tried to scan the school and look at a teacher that I thought was someone that I wanted to emulate. And I always kind of went to that teacher and said, hey, would you mind mentoring me? Like, I don't want to add any more to your plate, but just to be someone that is a sounding board to you. And I think if teachers can young teachers starting out who are placed in schools and not supply teachers, that's a different game altogether, because they're going to be going from school to school. And I think for those teachers who are going from school to school, I think they really have to take good care of their health. Like, I think they really have to focus on their immune system and their mental health, and not be ashamed of looking for therapy if they need therapy because of their anxiety. Like, I'm going to be looking at therapy soon because I know my anxiety is starting to peak with all of this. So look for the supports that are in place. But with teachers in schools, so if there's a young LTO or a young contracted teacher, um, take the initiative to find who you want as a mentor. Even if an NTIP is not in place for you that year, maybe you've done your NTIP and it's only your second year. You don't just quit being a young teacher on your second year just because your NTIP is done. So connect with someone in the staff that you think is wise, older than you, and who can navigate this through with you. Because truly, it's not like we know much more than young teachers, but the difference is we have understanding that comes in handy now, which is life experiences. You know, like, we know that we've lived through strikes, or we've lived through other really weird things. And so that navigation piece, how to move through these uncertain times, sometimes as a young person, you don't have that innately in you. And you need someone to say to you, hey, one day at a time, it's going to be okay. Someone to even, I had a principal, she recently retired. And one of the things that she was the most, like, one of the things she taught me that is one of the most valuable things, and she was very conscious of it. She always said to me, you need to remember how to pace yourself. Take time to slow it down. And it didn't make much sense to me because, like, you know, you're younger and you're like, but it really does make sense now. And I am so grateful that she was there being that voice for me when I couldn't do it on my own, right?
Yeah.
So I think that would be something that I have done. I would tap someone on the shoulder and say, hey, can you be my mentor? And that person needs to be someone that you trust, not only with curriculum. I think that piece needs to be in place. Someone who you can trust professionally to guide you towards resources and towards the right places in the system, even because even the website, it can be overwhelming, like, you know, Eero and SmartFind and all of those pieces, right? So that is one part, but also someone that you admire in a human way that can help you navigate this for your mental health and for your connection. But I think I say find a mentor.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's great advice. Yeah. I wish someone had said that to me early on, when I
Yeah.
first started, because especially the pacing part is true. It says you're young and excited and you just go. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Awesome.
sometimes you need someone to give you permission, right? You need
Right.
someone to give you permission to say, you know what? I think you should just go home and sleep today. You're looking messy and it's going to be worse for the children. But I wish someone had stopped me and said, no, you know what? Go home and sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great. Wow. I would love to give you now a time to share places that people can connect with you, either on social media, or tell us a little bit. I would like you to tell us a little bit about Feminine Harbor. I'm
Ah,
excited to hear about that.
yeah. So about 5 years ago, I had this idea. Actually, it's much older, but like, it started coming together with my master's. I finished my master's in education in 2017, and I sort of looked at female leadership in education through my master's, because I was looking at leadership, but I then specifically was interested in female leadership because one of the questions was, well, um, you know, there's a lack of female leadership in the world. People are noticing that now in, you know, CEOs and in all sorts of industries, nonprofit, profit, healthcare. There's a lack of women in leadership positions. And my question was always, well, that's not true for education. We have lots of very strong, fabulous leaders in education. So perhaps we're asking the wrong questions here. Instead of asking why there's not enough leaders in the world, maybe we should be asking at what is happening in education that allows for the environment for women to thrive as leaders, because there's an environment there that has been conducive. And it's funny, Danette, because at the beginning of my research, I got a lot of people saying, oh, it's kids. And I was like, no, I think this is a very shallow response. I think there's more to it. And I'm pretty sure I can find it if I ask, but it was very discouraged. But sure enough, I found the research, and there were people looking at those social aspects, like the social environment and what allowed for women to become leaders in education, other than the fact that, yes, it was connected to children, and there was an innate sort of, not innate, but there was a desire for those women to be there. And I started looking at those aspects. And when I realized that there was a pattern and there were things that were measurable, I thought, okay, how can I translate this to the community? How can I make that and transpose my research in female leadership in education with a more broader lens in the community? And that's how I created Feminine Harbor. Feminine Harbor is the idea that women can have journey, like it's a harbor because it's a safe place. It's feminine because it is about that women's journey, right? It's the feminine piece, but it's also a structure. And so playing with that imagery, with the stories of women who can come and go, who have had journeys, sometimes inner journeys, and a safe place for that journey to become someone else's inspiration. Because when you hear of a woman, like sometimes, we have people that work with us and women that work with us, and they're great teachers, but we don't know that for example, they climb mountains. And then it's like a whole other aspect of that woman. They go, why you were, or a black belt on something. Like I've had teachers that I worked with, and then suddenly they were like black belt. And they're like, what? You do that outside of here? And that is so inspiring, right? So I just wanted that conversation to be amplified, because that's to me what leadership really is. It's not just being able to navigate the system that we've created within the structures, but also how do you deal with life that comes with that system, and how do you balance that life? That's one of the things I was interested. So it's a storytelling platform for women of different generations and different cultural backgrounds. I operate from the KWR Gallery. I'm off this year. I'm still working. I took the year off because, well, I didn't know COVID was going to hit. Yeah. But I took the year off to just redesign. And I actually have a couple of meetings happening this week and all throughout this year, so that we can relaunch probably in 2022. But basically, it's a platform to instill that sense of leadership in women that goes beyond what we do in the systems, because the systems are patriarchal. The systems were created by men, and there's leadership of women happening everywhere in the kitchen, in every home. Right. And that's what I wanted to honor, is just show that translates, that if you don't see yourself as a leader because you don't work outside of your home, that's not true. You are a leader, and you can be a strong community leader, and you're making decisions all the time. So I wanted to bridge that conversation. So that is what I do on my spare time, which is, not a lot.
Not a lot, clearly.
But I try. And I'm very passionate about it. And you can find me on social media. I'm very accessible. Sometimes it takes me a little long to get back, just because there's sometimes an influx. Like there's days that there's nothing, but then there's days like 10 people decide to message me out one day. But Twitter, I am on Twitter and Instagram as Ms_C Miranda on both accounts. And I also have Feminine Harbor's account, which I run, and it's feminine_harbor without a U, and that was on purpose. People think I didn't spell it right, and it's like, no, it was a choice. It's a conversation piece. But anyway, so Facebook too, I am there with Feminine Harbor. My Facebook account is private, but you can find me on LinkedIn. Professionally, I am active on LinkedIn as Carolina Miranda. So
that is awesome. That's so great. I hope we can stay in touch, because when you get Feminine Harbor in your new redesigned look of it, I would love to be involved in whatever way. So I just hope we can stay in touch. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. You're so practical, so passionate, just all things that are really important to me and educators everywhere. So thank you so much.
Thank
And I
you
hope
so
you,
much.
yeah, I hope you have a good year this year, and I hope you stay well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Take care, hon.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And thank you for being here, and join me again next time when we have another guest to share their insights on education. Thank you and be well.